The rooster crowed at dawn like it owned the whole damn territory, and Fiona Lancaster stood in the dusty main street of Genoa, Nevada, clutching that bird's wicker cage like it was the last treasure on earth. The stagecoach driver had already thrown her trunk onto the ground with barely concealed disdain, and now she faced the small gathering of curious townsfolk who had come to witness her arrival as Owen Calloway's mail-order bride. Owen stood apart from the others, a tall man with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. He wore dusty work clothes and a hat that had seen better days, and when his gaze fell on her single trunk and then the rooster cage, something flickered across his face that Fiona could not quite read. She had expected disappointment, maybe even anger. Instead, he walked toward her with measured steps, his boots kicking up small clouds of Nevada dust with each stride. The year was 1878, and Fiona had traveled all the way from Pennsylvania with nothing but her late mother's trunk of clothes. $17 she had saved from working as a seamstress, and Beauregard, the rooster who had been her only companion through 3 years of living with her cruel aunt after her parents died. When she had answered Owen's advertisement for a wife, she had written honestly about her circumstances. She had no dowry, no family fortune, nothing to offer except her willingness to work hard and be a faithful wife. What she had not mentioned was the rooster, because she could not bear to leave him behind. Owen stopped a few feet from her, his eyes moving from her face to the cage and back again. The rooster, a magnificent bird with bronze and green feathers that caught the morning light, let out another proud crow. Several of the onlookers laughed, and Fiona felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Miss Lancaster," Owen said, his voice deep and surprisingly gentle. "Welcome to Genoa." "Mr. Calloway," she replied, gripping the cage tighter. "I must apologize. In my letters I told you I had no dowry, but I failed to mention that I do have this rooster. His name is Beauregard, and I raised him from a chick. I could not leave him behind. If this is unacceptable, I understand, but I will not abandon him." The words came out in a rush, and she braced herself for his reaction. She had nowhere else to go. If Owen sent her back, she would have to return to her aunt's house in Philadelphia, where she would spend the rest of her days being reminded of what a burden she was. Owen looked at the rooster for a long moment, and then something remarkable happened. His stern face softened, and the corners of his mouth lifted into a genuine smile that transformed his entire appearance. "You brought a rooster as your only dowry," he said, and there was no mockery in his tone, only a kind of wonder. He met her eyes, and the warmth there made her heart skip. "Then we start with sunrise." Fiona blinked, not quite sure she had heard him correctly. "I am sorry. If your dowry is a rooster who greets the dawn, then we start our life together with sunrise," Owen explained. He reached out and took the cage from her hands, his fingers brushing hers briefly, sending an unexpected warmth through her despite the Nevada heat. "Every morning, he will remind us that we have another day to build something good here. That seems like a fine way to begin." Relief flooded through Fiona so powerfully that her knees felt weak. She had prepared herself for rejection, for scorn, for being sent away. Instead, this rancher who was still a stranger looked at her with kindness and spoke words that made her feel, for the first time in years, like she might actually be welcome somewhere. "Thank you," she whispered, not trusting her voice to say more. Owen picked up her trunk with his free hand as if it weighed nothing and gestured toward a wagon waiting at the end of the street. "Come on, then. The ranch is about 5 miles out. We should get going before the day gets any hotter." As they walked through Genoa, Fiona took in her surroundings. The town was small but vibrant, nestled in a valley with the Sierra Nevada mountains rising majestically to the west. Buildings lined the main street, including a general store, a saloon, a church, and various other establishments that served the ranching community. Despite being one of Nevada's oldest settlements, Genoa still had that raw frontier quality that made everything feel both exciting and slightly dangerous. Owen helped her into the wagon seat, placing Beauregard's cage carefully in the back alongside her trunk. He climbed up beside her and took the reins of two sturdy horses, a bay and a roan, both well-muscled and clearly well cared for. As they rolled out of town, silence stretched between them, but it was not entirely uncomfortable. Fiona studied Owen from the corner of her eye, trying to understand the man she had agreed to marry. His letters had been simple and straightforward, explaining that he owned a cattle ranch, that he needed a wife to help run the household, and that he was looking for someone practical and hardworking. He had not written flowery words or made grand promises, which had actually appealed to Fiona. She had read enough novels to know that real life was not filled with poetry and declarations of undying love. She wanted stability, safety, and the chance to build a life that was her own. "How long have you had the ranch?" she asked, breaking the silence. 8 years now," Owen replied, his eyes on the road ahead. "I came to Nevada in '70, worked as a hand for a few different outfits, saved my money and bought the land in '71, started with just 50 head of cattle. Now I have got close to 300, plus about 20 horses." "That is impressive," Fiona said, and she meant it. Building something from nothing took determination and grit. Owen shrugged. "I work hard, but running a ranch this size alone has gotten difficult. I need help, and I am tired of coming home to an empty house every night." He glanced at her, and there was a vulnerability in his expression that surprised her. "I hope we can make this work, Fiona. I will not pretend to be something I am not. I am just a rancher trying to build a good life, but I promise I will treat you well and provide for you." The sincerity in his voice touched something deep inside her. "I will work hard," she said. "I may not know much about ranching, but I can learn. I can cook, keep a house, tend a garden. I am not afraid of hard work." "I figured that much from your letters," Owen said, and she caught the hint of a smile. "A woman who travels across the country alone with nothing but a rooster has got to have some courage." Fiona felt herself smile in return. "Or desperation." "Maybe both," Owen said gently. "But there is no shame in that. We all do what we must to survive." The landscape opened up before them as they traveled, revealing rolling hills dotted with sagebrush and the occasional cluster of juniper trees. In the distance, cattle grazed peacefully, and Fiona felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. This was so different from the crowded, sooty streets of Philadelphia. Here, the sky seemed endless, and the air smelled of dust and pine and something wild she could not quite name. After about an hour, they crested a hill, and Owen pulled the horses to a stop. "There," he said, pointing. "That is home." Fiona followed his gaze and saw a ranch nestled in a valley below. A modest but well-built house stood at the center, with a barn, a corral, and several outbuildings surrounding it. It was not grand, but it looked solid and well-maintained. Smoke rose from the chimney, which puzzled her until Owen explained. "My foreman, Samuel, and his wife, Rosa, live in the bunkhouse. Rosa probably started a fire this morning to make breakfast. She has been helping keep the main house clean, but she will be glad to hand those duties over to you. They have got 2 young children, so Rosa has her hands full." "I look forward to meeting them," Fiona said. As they descended toward the ranch, a black and white dog came bounding up the road to meet them, barking excitedly. Owen whistled, and the dog immediately calmed, falling into step beside the wagon. "That is Scout," Owen said. Best cattle dog in the territory. He is friendly once he knows you." When they reached the house, a man and woman emerged. Samuel was lean and weathered, probably in his 40s, with dark hair and a kind face. Rosa was younger, perhaps 30, with warm brown eyes and a gentle smile. Two children peeked out from behind her skirts, a boy of about 6 and a girl who could not have been more than 4. Owen helped Fiona down from the wagon, and she felt every eye on her as she smoothed her travel-worn dress. She must have looked a sight after days on the stagecoach, dusty and disheveled, but Rosa stepped forward immediately with a welcoming smile. "Miss Lancaster, we are so glad you are here," Rosa said, her accent carrying a soft Spanish lilt. "Owen has been looking forward to your arrival." "Please call me Fiona," she said, grateful for the warmth in Rosa's voice. "And I am Rosa. This is my husband, Samuel, and our children, Miguel and little Elena." Rosa gestured to each in turn. Miguel studied Fiona with open curiosity, while Elena hid her face shyly. Owen carried Beauregard's cage toward a small chicken coop near the barn. "I built this last year thinking I might get some laying hens," he called back to Fiona. "Your rooster can stay here. There is a good run, and he will be safe from predators." Fiona followed him, watching as he opened the cage and gently lifted Beauregard out. The rooster, usually temperamental with strangers, allowed Owen to carry him without protest. Owen set him down in the coop, and Beauregard immediately began exploring his new home, scratching at the ground and ruffling his feathers. "He likes it," Fiona said, surprised at how much it mattered to her that her rooster be content. "We will get him some hens to keep him company," Owen said. "A rooster without hens is a lonely thing." The way he said it made Fiona wonder if he was talking about more than just the rooster. She glanced at him, but he was already walking back toward the house, carrying her trunk. The interior of the house was simple but clean. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace, a sturdy table and chairs, and shelves lined with dishes and supplies. 2 doors led off the main room, presumably to bedrooms. Rosa had laid out bread, cheese, and cold meat on the table. "I thought you might be hungry after your journey," she said. "Thank you. This is very kind," Fiona replied, suddenly aware of how long it had been since she had eaten anything substantial. They sat down to eat, and the conversation flowed easily. Samuel asked about her journey, and Fiona found herself relaxing as she described the stagecoach ride through the mountains, the other passengers, and the changing landscape. Owen said little, but she noticed him watching her, and every time their eyes met, she felt a flutter in her chest that was entirely new to her. After the meal, Rosa showed Fiona around the house while the men went out to check on the cattle. The main bedroom was clearly Owen's, with a large bed covered in a simple quilt and a dresser holding his few personal items. The second bedroom was smaller but still comfortable, with a narrow bed and a window that looked out toward the mountains. "Owen thought you might want your own room," Rosa said gently. "Until you are comfortable." Fiona felt her face flush. She had known, of course, that marriage to Owen would mean sharing his bed eventually, but the thoughtfulness of giving her time to adjust touched her. "That is very considerate of him." "He is a good man," Rosa said. "Quiet but good. He treats Samuel and me with respect, pays fair wages, never raises his voice in anger. You could have done much worse." "I am beginning to realize that," Fiona admitted. Rosa smiled. "Come, I will show you the rest of the ranch. You should know where everything is." Over the next hour, Rosa gave Fiona a complete tour. The barn housed 6 horses in addition to the 2 that pulled the wagon. Rosa explained that Owen had a particular gift with horses, that he could gentle the wildest mustang with patience and kindness. The chickens, once they acquired some, would provide eggs. There was a root cellar for storing vegetables, a smokehouse for meat, and a well that provided clean, cold water. "The garden is here," Rosa said, leading Fiona to a fenced area behind the house. "I have been trying to keep it going, but with the children, I do not have as much time as I would like." The garden was overgrown with weeds, though Fiona could see the remains of what had once been neat rows of vegetables. "I can work on this," she said, already mentally planning how to restore it. "Owen will be pleased," Rosa said. "He talks sometimes about wanting fresh vegetables with dinner, but neither Samuel nor I are much good with growing things." As they walked back toward the house, Fiona saw Owen and Samuel working in the corral with a young horse, probably 2 or 3 years old. The horse was skittish, shying away whenever Owen approached, but Owen moved slowly and deliberately, speaking in a low, calm voice. Eventually, the horse allowed him to come close enough to stroke its neck. "He has been working with that one for weeks," Rosa said. "She was wild, part of a herd Samuel rounded up in the hills. Most of the horses Owen sold, but he kept this one. He says she has good lines, that she will make a fine saddle horse once she trusts people." Fiona watched, fascinated by Owen's patience. He never forced the horse, never moved quickly or aggressively. He simply waited, offering gentle touches and soft words until the horse began to relax. "He is like that with everything," Rosa continued. "Patient, steady. When Alina was born, she was small and sickly. The doctor in town said she probably would not survive, but Owen sat up with her through the night while I slept, holding her, keeping her warm. He told Samuel that sometimes all it takes is someone refusing to give up. Alina pulled through, and I do not think it was coincidence." The story made Fiona's throat tight with emotion. She had expected a practical arrangement with Owen, a marriage of convenience and mutual benefit. But the more she learned about him, the more she realized there were depths to this quiet rancher that his letters had not revealed. That evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Fiona helped Rosa prepare dinner. Owen and Samuel came in tired and dusty, and they all sat down together to eat. The meal was simple but filling: beef stew with potatoes and carrots, accompanied by Rosa's fresh bread. Miguel chattered excitedly about a nest of baby rabbits he had found near the barn, while Alina climbed into her father's lap and promptly fell asleep. The domestic scene made Fiona's heart ache with a longing she had not allowed herself to feel in years. This was what she wanted: a family, a home, people who cared about each other. After dinner, Samuel and Rosa took their children back to the bunkhouse, leaving Owen and Fiona alone for the first time since arriving at the ranch. Fiona busied herself clearing the table, suddenly nervous now that it was just the two of them. "You do not have to do that tonight," Owen said. "You must be exhausted." "I do not mind," Fiona replied, carrying dishes to the basin. "It feels good to have something to do with my hands." Owen stood and helped her, and they worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes. When the dishes were clean and put away, Owen poured them each a cup of coffee, and they sat at the table. "I want you to know," Owen began, his hands wrapped around his cup, "that I do not expect anything from you right away. I know this is all very sudden. We are strangers, really, despite the letters. I want you to have time to adjust, to feel comfortable here." Fiona met his eyes and saw only sincerity there. "Thank you," she said softly. "I appreciate that. I do hope," Owen continued, and now there was a hint of vulnerability in his voice, "that eventually we can build something real. I did not just want someone to cook and clean. I wanted a partner, someone to share this life with." "I want that too," Fiona said, and she realized it was true. Looking at Owen now, seeing the kindness in his eyes and the gentleness in his manner, she felt the first stirrings of something that might, in time, become love. They talked for another hour, sharing more about their lives. Owen told her about growing up in Missouri, the youngest of 5 children. His parents had died in a cholera outbreak when he was 16, and his older siblings had scattered, each trying to make their own way. He had drifted west, working various jobs before finding his calling in ranching. Fiona shared her own story about her happy childhood that had ended abruptly when her parents died in a factory fire. She had been 15, suddenly alone in the world except for her mother's sister, a bitter woman who resented having to take in an orphan. Fiona had worked as a seamstress to earn her keep, saving every penny she could, dreaming of escape. The rooster was a gift from a kind neighbor, Fiona explained. She knew how unhappy I was and thought having something to care for might help. Beauregard became my friend, the one thing in that house that was truly mine. I am glad you brought him, Owen said. I meant what I said this morning. Starting with sunrise seems right. That night, Fiona lay in the small bedroom, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch. She could hear cattle lowing in the distance, the soft nicker of horses in the barn, and the rustle of wind through the juniper trees. From the coop, Beauregard let out an occasional soft cluck, settling into his new home. In the morning, Beauregard's crow woke her before dawn. Fiona dressed quickly and went into the main room, where she found Owen already up, stoking the fire. "Good morning," he said, and his smile made her feel warm despite the early morning chill. "True to his word, your rooster is starting our day." "I hope he did not wake you too early," Fiona said. "I am usually up before dawn anyway," Owen replied. "Coffee." They shared breakfast, just the two of them, and Fiona found herself enjoying the quiet intimacy of the moment. There was something peaceful about starting the day together. The world still dark outside the windows, just the two of them and the warmth of the fire. Over the following days, Fiona settled into life on the ranch. She took over the household duties, discovering that she enjoyed creating a home in a way she never had when living with her aunt. She cleaned and organized, cooked hearty meals for the men, and began tackling the overgrown garden. Owen was gone most days from dawn until dusk, working with Samuel to tend the cattle, repair fences, and handle the endless tasks that came with running a ranch. But he always came home for dinner, and the evenings became Fiona's favorite time. They would sit together after the meal, talking about their days, sharing stories, slowly learning each other. Fiona noticed small kindnesses from Owen. He brought her wildflowers he found while riding the range. He fixed the squeaky hinge on the garden gate without her having to ask. He always asked about her day, genuinely interested in the small details of her work around the house. One afternoon, about a week after her arrival, Fiona was working in the garden when she heard a commotion from the chicken coop. She hurried over to find a fox trying to dig under the fence. Beauregard was making a terrible racket and Scout was barking furiously. Without thinking, Fiona grabbed a shovel and chased the fox away, her heart pounding. Owen came running from the barn. "Are you all right?" he asked, slightly out of breath. "I am fine," Fiona said, though her hands were shaking. There was a fox after Beauregard. Owen examined the fence, finding where the fox had been digging. "I will reinforce this," he said. "We cannot have predators getting to your rooster." "He is just a rooster," Fiona said, though her voice was unsteady. "He is important to you," Owen replied, meeting her eyes. "That makes him important to me." Something shifted between them in that moment. Fiona felt it, a deepening of the connection that had been growing since her arrival. Owen must have felt it too, because he reached out and gently touched her cheek. "You have been here a week," he said softly, "and already this place feels more like a home than it ever has." Fiona's breath caught. "For me too," she whispered. They stood there for a long moment, the afternoon sun warm on their faces, and Fiona thought Owen might kiss her, but he stepped back, clearing his throat. "I should get back to work. We are moving the herd to new pasture today." Fiona nodded, feeling both disappointed and relieved. She was not quite ready yet, but she was getting closer. That evening, as they sat together after dinner, Owen said, "I need to go into town tomorrow for supplies. Would you like to come? I thought I could introduce you around properly, and you could pick out some fabric or whatever you might need." "I would like that," Fiona said, pleased at the thought of seeing more of Genoa and meeting people properly. The next morning they set out early in the wagon. Beauregard crowed as they left, and Fiona laughed. "He really is determined to mark every sunrise," she said. "He takes his job seriously," Owen replied with a grin. The ride to town was pleasant, and Fiona found herself more relaxed with Owen than she had been. They talked easily now, and sometimes they simply enjoyed the comfortable silence. When they arrived in Genoa, Owen helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering on her waist just a moment longer than necessary. They visited the general store first, where Owen introduced Fiona to the proprietor, a jovial man named Henry Wright. Henry's wife, Margaret, came out from the back room, and her eyes lit up when she saw Fiona. "Oh, how wonderful!" Margaret exclaimed. "Another woman in the area. You must come to church this Sunday. We have a small congregation, but everyone is very friendly." "I would like that," Fiona said, warming to Margaret immediately. While Owen discussed supplies with Henry, Margaret showed Fiona the fabrics she had in stock. Fiona selected a few yards of sturdy cotton for work dresses and some pretty calico that caught her eye. "This color would look lovely on you," Margaret said, holding up a blue fabric that matched Fiona's eyes. "You should make yourself something nice for Sunday services." Fiona hesitated, thinking of the cost, but Owen appeared at her side. "Get whatever you like," he said. "You need proper clothes, and you have been working hard. You deserve something pretty." The thoughtfulness of the gesture made Fiona's eyes sting with unexpected tears. Her aunt had never allowed her to have anything that was not strictly practical. "Thank you," she managed to say. They spent another hour in town, and Owen introduced Fiona to various townspeople. Everyone was curious about the new bride, but most were welcoming. The minister, Reverend Thomas, invited them to dinner after church on Sunday, and his wife promised to organize a quilting bee so Fiona could meet the other women. On the way back to the ranch, Fiona felt lighter than she had in years. "Everyone was so kind," she said. "They are good people," Owen agreed. "Life out here is hard. People learn to take care of each other." When they arrived home, Owen carried the supplies into the house while Fiona checked on Beauregard. The rooster was strutting around his coop, looking proud and content. She scattered some grain for him, smiling at his antics. "I told Owen we should get you some lady friends," she said to the rooster. "Would you like that?" Beauregard fluffed his feathers and let out a soft crow, which Fiona took as agreement. That evening, after dinner, Owen suggested they sit outside for a while. The nights were beautiful in Nevada, the sky filling with more stars than Fiona had ever imagined existed. They sat on the porch steps, shoulders almost touching, and looked up at the vast expanse of sky. "I used to feel so alone," Owen said quietly. "Even with Samuel and Rosa here, with the cattle and the horses and Scout, I felt alone. But since you came, that feeling has gone away." Fiona turned to look at him, and in the starlight she could see the emotion on his face. "I know what you mean," she said. "I have felt alone since my parents died, but here with you, I feel like I have finally found where I belong." Owen reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. The touch sent warmth spreading through her, and she squeezed his hand gently. "Fiona," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know we have not known each other long, but I need you to know that I am falling in love with you. Not because I need a wife to help with the ranch, but because of who you are. Your kindness, your courage, the way you laugh at your rooster's antics, the way you have made this house a home, all of it." Fiona's heart felt like it might burst. "Owen," she whispered, "I am falling in love with you too. I did not expect to, but I am. When I see you with the horses, so patient and gentle, when you bring me wildflowers, when you talk about reinforcing the coop to keep Beauregard safe, I feel something I have never felt before." Owen lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "May I court you properly?" he asked. "I know we are already married in name, but I want to do this right. I want to give you romance and sweetness, not just a practical arrangement." "Yes," Fiona said, her voice catching. "I would like that very much." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but she did not want to. When his lips met hers, it was gentle and sweet, a kiss full of promise and hope. Fiona's first kiss, and it was perfect. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I am going to make you happy," he promised. "Every day for the rest of our lives, I am going to try to make you happy." "You already do," Fiona said, and she meant it with her whole heart. Over the next weeks, their relationship deepened and blossomed. True to his word, Owen courted Fiona properly. He took her on picnics up in the hills where they could see for miles in every direction. He taught her to ride, selecting the gentlest horse and staying close, ready to catch her if she faltered. He picked wildflowers for her every day until she had them in jars all around the house. Fiona bloomed under his attention. The sadness that had lived in her eyes since her parents died began to fade, replaced by joy. She sang while she worked, and her laughter rang out often. She restored the garden to health, and soon they had fresh vegetables with every meal. She sewed curtains for the windows and a new quilt for Owen's bed, the one that would soon be their bed. At church on Sundays, they sat together, and Fiona noticed the approving looks from the congregation. After services, they often stayed for socials, and Fiona made friends with the other women. Margaret Wright became a particular friend, stopping by the ranch sometimes to visit and share gossip. One afternoon, about a month after Fiona's arrival, Owen came home with a crate in the back of the wagon. Fiona heard clucking and hurried out to investigate. "You said Beauregard needed some lady friends," Owen said with a grin. "So I bought 6 hens from a rancher over in Carson Valley." Fiona clapped her hands with delight. "Oh, Owen, really, really," he said, clearly pleased with her reaction. "I thought we could use the eggs, and your rooster has been doing such a good job waking us up every morning. He deserves a proper flock." They released the hens into the coop, and Beauregard immediately began showing off, puffing out his chest and strutting around. The hens seemed suitably impressed, and Fiona laughed at the whole display. "He is in his glory now," she said, watching Beauregard herd his new hens around the coop. "He looks how I feel," Owen said, slipping his arm around Fiona's waist, "like the luckiest male in the territory." Fiona leaned into him, marveling at how natural it felt to be held by him. "I am happy," she said simply. "I did not think I ever would be again, but I am." "So am I," Owen said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. That night after dinner, Fiona moved her belongings into Owen's room. They had been building toward this moment for weeks, and it felt right and natural. Owen was gentle and patient, showing her the same care he showed his horses and everything else he valued. And when they came together as husband and wife, it was with love and tenderness that made Fiona feel cherished and safe. Afterward, lying in Owen's arms, Fiona felt completely at peace for the first time in years. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Owen replied, his arms tightening around her. "More than I thought I could love anyone." As summer turned to fall, life on the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. Fiona's garden produced abundantly, and she spent long days preserving vegetables for the winter. Owen and Samuel brought in good money from selling cattle, and Owen began talking about expanding the herd come spring. The chickens flourished under Beauregard's protective watch. He took his role as flock leader seriously, always on alert for predators. One day, Fiona heard him making a terrible racket and rushed out to find him facing down a hawk that had swooped into the run. Beauregard had positioned himself between the hawk and his hens, his wings spread wide, completely fearless despite being a fraction of the hawk's size. Scout came running at the noise, and together they drove the hawk away. "That rooster of yours is something else," Samuel said, having witnessed the whole thing. "I have never seen a bird with such courage." "He has always been brave," Fiona said proudly. "He might not look like much, but he has a lion's heart." That evening she told Owen about the incident, and he went out to check on Beauregard, making sure the rooster had not been injured in the confrontation. Fiona watched from the window as Owen gently examined the bird, speaking to him in the same calm, soothing voice he used with the horses. "Your rooster is fine," Owen reported when he came back inside. "Not a scratch on him. I gave him some extra grain as a reward for protecting his ladies." "You are good to him," Fiona said, her heart full. "Thank you for caring about something that matters to me." "How could I not?" Owen replied, pulling her into his arms. "He is part of our family now, just like Scout and the horses." In November, the first snow fell, dusting the mountains white and bringing a crisp chill to the air. Fiona woke one morning to find Owen already up, stoking the fire to warm the house. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and padded out to join him. "Come here," he said, gesturing to the window. Outside, the world was transformed, everything covered in a light layer of white. Beauregard stood in the doorway of his coop, looking deeply offended by this turn of events while the hens clustered inside. Fiona laughed. "He has never seen snow before. He does not know what to make of it." "Neither did I the first time," Owen said. "I grew up in Missouri where we got snow, but nothing like what we get here sometimes. The first winter I spent in Nevada, I was not prepared for how cold it could get." They stood together, watching the sunrise paint the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. Beauregard finally ventured out into the snow, lifting his feet high with each step, as if trying to avoid touching the cold ground. It was so comical that both Fiona and Owen burst out laughing. "I think he regrets his decision already," Owen said as Beauregard hurried back to the shelter of the coop. Winter set in earnest after that, and the ranch work changed. There was less to do outside, but more time was spent ensuring the animals had enough food and shelter. Owen and Samuel checked on the cattle daily, breaking ice on the water troughs and making sure the herd stayed together. Fiona and Rosa worked together more often, and the children were frequent visitors to the main house, playing on the floor while the women worked. On Christmas Eve, they all gathered in the main house for dinner. Rosa had made tamales, a tradition from her childhood in Mexico, and Fiona had baked pies and roasted a chicken. Owen produced a bottle of wine he had been saving, and they toasted to family and friendship. After dinner, Owen gave Fiona a package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a beautiful shawl, far finer than anything she had ever owned, made of soft wool in a deep blue color. "Owen," she breathed, "this is too much." "Nothing is too much for you," he said. "I ordered it from San Francisco months ago, before you even arrived. I saw it in a catalog and thought it would match your eyes." Fiona wrapped the shawl around her shoulders, and Rosa exclaimed over how lovely it was. "You are spoiling her," Rosa teased Owen. "She deserves to be spoiled," Owen replied, his eyes on Fiona with such love that she felt her cheeks flush. Fiona gave Owen her gift, a shirt she had sewn from fabric she had bought in town with money from selling eggs. She had embroidered his initials on the pocket, working on it in secret whenever he was out on the range. Owen ran his fingers over the careful stitching, clearly moved. "This is beautiful, Fiona. Thank you." That night, after Samuel and Rosa had taken the children home, Owen and Fiona sat by the fire, comfortable in each other's presence. "This is the best Christmas I have had in years," Owen said. "Maybe ever." "Mine too," Fiona agreed. She thought of the lonely Christmases with her aunt, the years of feeling unwanted and out of place. This, here with Owen, was everything she had ever dreamed of. As winter progressed, Fiona began to suspect she might be pregnant. Her monthly courses were late, and she felt tired and slightly queasy in the mornings. She waited a few more weeks to be certain before telling Owen, wanting to be sure before she raised his hopes. One evening in late January, as they lay in bed, Fiona finally gathered her courage. "Owen," she said softly, "I have something to tell you." He immediately turned to face her, concern in his eyes. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am fine," she assured him. "Better than fine. I think I am with child." For a moment, Owen just stared at her as if he had not quite heard correctly. Then a smile broke across his face, so bright and full of joy that Fiona felt tears spring to her eyes. "Truly?" he asked, his voice cracking with emotion. "Truly," she confirmed. "I am fairly certain, though I would like to see the doctor in town to be sure." Owen gathered her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "A baby," he whispered. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Fiona asked, though she could see the answer on his face. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Owen said. He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Our child. Yours and mine." They went to town the following week, and Dr. Preston confirmed what Fiona already knew. She was about 3 months along and due in early July. Owen was so excited he could barely contain himself, and he told Samuel and Rosa the news as soon as they got home. Rosa hugged Fiona tightly. "This is wonderful news," she said, "and I will help you. I remember how frightening it was with my first. You will not go through this alone." "Thank you," Fiona said, grateful for the friendship and support. As her pregnancy progressed, Owen became even more protective and solicitous. He would not let her lift anything heavy, insisted she rest every afternoon, and fussed over her constantly. It would have been annoying if it was not so endearing. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," Fiona protested one day when Owen tried to stop her from carrying a basket of eggs from the coop. "I know," Owen said, taking the basket anyway, "but humor me. I have never done this before, and I am terrified something will go wrong." Fiona softened immediately. She cupped his face in her hands. "I am healthy and strong," she said gently. "The doctor says everything is progressing normally. Try not to worry so much." "I will try," Owen promised, though she knew he would still worry. Spring arrived, bringing warmer weather and new life to the ranch. Beauregard's hens began sitting on eggs, and soon there were fluffy yellow chicks peeping around the coop. Fiona spent hours watching them, delighting in their antics and marveling at how Beauregard guarded them as fiercely as he did the hens. "He is going to be like that with our baby," Fiona told Owen one evening. "Protective and proud." "I am already like that with our baby," Owen replied, his hand resting on her swelling belly. "And he or she is not even here yet." As summer approached, Fiona grew larger and more uncomfortable in the heat. Owen brought in a woman from town, Mrs. Davies, to help with the household chores and to be there when the baby came. Fiona was grateful for the help, as simple tasks were becoming difficult. In early July, on a hot morning when Beauregard's crow seemed particularly insistent, Fiona's labor began. Owen sent Samuel racing to town for Dr. Preston, while he and Rosa helped Fiona to the bedroom. Mrs. Davies took charge immediately, her calm competence helping to settle Fiona's nerves. Owen stayed by Fiona's side through it all, holding her hand, wiping her brow, murmuring words of encouragement. The labor was long and difficult, lasting well into the night, but finally, as the sun was beginning to rise the next morning, their son was born. The baby's first cry filled the room, and Fiona wept with relief and joy. Mrs. Davies cleaned the baby and placed him in Fiona's arms, and Fiona looked down at the tiny, red-faced creature in wonder. "He is perfect," she whispered. Owen, who had tears streaming down his face, leaned over to examine his son. "He is beautiful," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "just like his mother." They named him William after Fiona's father, and he immediately became the center of their world. Owen was a devoted father from the very first moment, changing diapers, walking the floor with William when he cried, and gazing at his son with such love and wonder that it made Fiona's heart ache. Beauregard seemed to understand that something important had happened. The first time Fiona brought William outside, wrapped in a blanket against the warm summer air, the rooster came over to investigate. He looked at the baby for a long moment, then let out a soft, gentle cluck, as if offering his approval. "Well, Beauregard has accepted him," Fiona said with a laugh. "That is a good sign. Our rooster has good taste," Owen replied, his arm around Fiona's shoulders as they both looked down at their sleeping son. Life with a baby was exhausting but wonderful. Fiona had never been happier, even during the sleepless nights and endless feedings. Owen helped as much as he could while still managing the ranch, and Rosa was a constant source of advice and support. Miguel and Alina were fascinated by the baby, always wanting to hold him or help in some way. As William grew, he became a bright, happy baby with his father's storm gray eyes and his mother's light hair. He loved being outside, and Fiona often sat on the porch with him, letting him watch the animals and listen to the sounds of the ranch. Beauregard remained a constant presence in their lives, still faithfully greeting every sunrise with his crow. When William was old enough to toddle around, he would follow the rooster around the yard, giggling at the bird's proud strut. Beauregard tolerated the attention with surprising patience, as if he understood that this small human was someone special. One afternoon, when William was about a year old, Fiona found Owen watching their son play in the yard, Scout lying nearby keeping watch. The expression on Owen's face was one of such contentment that Fiona's breath caught. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, coming to stand beside him. "About how different my life is from what I imagined," Owen said. "A year and a half ago, I was alone, thinking that was probably how I would always be. Then you arrived with nothing but a rooster and more courage than anyone I had ever met. And now, I have a wife I love more than I thought possible and a son who is the best thing that ever happened to me. It is more than I dreamed of." Fiona leaned her head on his shoulder. "I feel the same way. I thought my life was over when my parents died, that I would never be anything more than a burden to my aunt. But then I saw your advertisement and something told me to answer it. Best decision I ever made." "Best decision I ever made was reading your letter and thinking, this woman sounds like someone I could build a life with," Owen said. He kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Fiona Calloway." "I love you too, Owen Calloway," she replied. As the years passed, their family grew. When William was 3, Fiona gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah, who had Fiona's blue eyes and Owen's dark hair. 2 years after that came another son, James, who seemed to inherit the best qualities of both his parents. The ranch prospered along with the family. Owen expanded the herd and bought more land, becoming one of the most successful ranchers in the area. But he never lost his gentle touch with animals or his devotion to his family. He taught William and James to ride, showing them the same patience he had once shown a frightened wild horse. He taught Sarah to be brave and capable, never suggesting that she was less able because she was a girl. Beauregard lived to be quite old for a rooster, still crowing at sunrise every morning until he finally passed away peacefully one spring night. The whole family mourned him, and they buried him in a corner of the garden he had so often guarded. Owen carved a marker for his grave, and Fiona planted wildflowers over it. He was more than just a rooster, Fiona said at the simple service they held. He was my friend when I had no others, and he brought me to this place, to all of you. I will never forget him. He started everything, Owen agreed, his arm around Fiona's shoulders. Every sunrise of our life together began with him. That is a legacy worth remembering. They got another rooster eventually, one of Beauregard's descendants, and the tradition of starting each day with a rooster's crow continued. But there would never be another Beauregard, and they all knew it. As William grew into a young man, he showed a gift for working with horses like his father. James was more interested in the cattle side of things, while Sarah surprised them all by showing a talent for breeding chickens, creating a flock known throughout the territory for their productivity. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Owen took Fiona back to Genoa, to the spot where he had first seen her standing in the street holding Beauregard's cage. They stood there together, older now but still very much in love. "You remember that day?" Owen asked. "Every detail," Fiona replied. "I was terrified you would send me away when you saw I had nothing to offer but a rooster." "You had everything to offer," Owen said. "Courage, kindness, strength, love. The rooster was just a bonus." He pulled her close. "Best dowry I ever received." Fiona laughed and kissed him, not caring who might see. "And you gave me a life I never thought I could have. You gave me love, a home, a family, everything I ever wanted." "We gave each other those things," Owen corrected gently. "That is what marriage is, building something together." They walked through town, visiting old friends and stopping by the church where they had worshipped together for so many years. Reverend Thomas, now quite elderly, smiled when he saw them. "Still in love after 20 years, he said. "That is what I like to see." "More in love than ever," Owen confirmed, and Fiona nodded in agreement. On the ride home, they talked about their children, their dreams for the future, and the life they had built together. When they arrived at the ranch, now even larger and more prosperous than when Fiona had first seen it, their children and grandchildren, for William had married 2 years earlier and already had a baby daughter, were waiting to celebrate with them. That evening, the whole family gathered for dinner. There was laughter and good food, stories and songs. Fiona looked around the table at all these people she loved, all this life that had sprung from one frightened woman and one kind man and a rooster who crowed at sunrise. As the sun set, painting the Nevada sky in brilliant colors, Owen found Fiona on the porch, watching the last light fade. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and she leaned back against him with a contented sigh. "Happy?" he asked. "Happier than I have words to express," Fiona replied. "You have given me everything, Owen." "We gave each other everything," he corrected again. He turned her in his arms so they were face to face. 20 years ago, you stepped off that stage with nothing but courage and a rooster. Today, you are surrounded by children and grandchildren, by a home and a ranch and a life full of love. You did that, Fiona. Your strength, your kindness, your willingness to take a chance on a lonely rancher. And your willingness to take a chance on a woman with no dowry, Fiona reminded him. A lesser man would have sent me away. Then I am glad I am not a lesser man, Owen said with a smile, because I would have missed out on the greatest gift of my life. In the distance, they could hear the current Rooster, Beauregard the Third as the children called him, settling in for the night. In the morning, he would crow at sunrise, just as his grandfather had done, marking the beginning of another day in their life together. Fiona thought about all the years that had passed, all the love and laughter, the challenges they had faced together and overcome. She thought about standing in that dusty street in Genoa, clutching a rooster cage and wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. And she thought about Owen's smile when he had said, "Then we start with sunrise." "I love you," she said, the words still feeling as important and meaningful as the first time she had spoken them. "I love you too," Owen replied, "today, tomorrow, and for all the sunrises still to come." They stood together on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms as the stars began to emerge in the vast Nevada sky. Behind them, the house was full of family and warmth and love. Around them, the ranch hummed with life. And ahead of them stretched more years together, more sunrises, more moments of joy and connection. It had all started with a rooster, a dowry that had seemed like nothing but had actually been everything. Because it had brought Fiona to Owen, and together they had built a life richer than any material wealth could provide. They had built a family, a home, a legacy of love that would continue long after they were gone. As they finally went inside, Owen's hand warm in hers, Fiona felt nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for her courage in answering that advertisement. Gratitude for Owen's kindness in accepting her as she was. And yes, gratitude for Beauregard, the brave little rooster who had been her companion through the darkest times and who had brought her to the greatest happiness. The door closed behind them, shutting out the cool evening air, and inside there was light and laughter and love. So much love. More than enough for a lifetime. More than enough to last forever. The ranch would continue to grow and thrive. Their children would have children of their own, and those children would have children, creating a family tree that spread wide and strong. The chickens would continue to crow at sunrise, generation after generation, always reminding the family of where they had come from and what they had built. Years later, when Owen and Fiona were old and gray, sitting on that same porch and watching their great-grandchildren play in the yard, they would sometimes talk about that first day. About how nervous Fiona had been, about how Owen had smiled when he saw the rooster, about how they had both taken a leap of faith that had changed everything. "We start with sunrise," Owen would say, and Fiona would smile, remembering. "We start with sunrise," she would agree, and they would sit together, still in love, still grateful, still starting each new day together. And every morning, without fail, a rooster would crow, marking another sunrise, another beginning, another day of the beautiful life they had created together. It was a simple thing, really, but simple things often hold the deepest meaning. A rooster crowing at dawn, a man's kind smile, a woman's courage, love growing slowly and surely until it filled every corner of their lives. That was their story, the story of Owen and Fiona Calloway, and it was a good one. It was a story of love and faith, of taking chances and building something beautiful from almost nothing. It was a story that would be told and retold by their descendants, each generation marveling at the courage of the woman who had traveled west with only a rooster, and the wisdom of the man who had seen that as the beginning of something wonderful. The ranch house still stood, generations later, carefully maintained and cherished. The chicken coop still held descendants of Beauregard's flock. And in the family cemetery, two graves side by side marked the resting place of Owen and Fiona Calloway, together in death as they had been in life. But that was far in the future. For now, on this night of their 20th anniversary, they were still young enough to have many years ahead of them, still healthy and strong, still deeply in love. They had built something lasting, something real, something that would endure long after they were gone. As they lay in bed that night, Owen's arms around her and the sound of their family settling in for the night around them, Fiona thought about how different her life might have been if she had not had the courage to leave Philadelphia. If Owen had rejected her when he saw she had no proper dowry. If they had not both been willing to take a chance on love, but she had been brave and he had been kind, and they had both been willing. And from those simple beginnings had sprung this beautiful, complicated, wonderful life. A life full of love and laughter, hard work and deep satisfaction, family and friends and purpose. "What are you thinking about?" Owen murmured sleepily. "About how lucky I am," Fiona replied. "About how a rooster changed my life." Owen chuckled softly. "Beauregard had quite an impact, did he not?" "He did," Fiona agreed. "But mostly, I am thinking about you and how grateful I am that you were the kind of man who could see past a woman's lack of wealth to the person she was inside." "I saw your worth from the moment I read your first letter," Owen said. "You were honest and hardworking and brave. Those things are worth more than any dowry, and every day since, you have proven that I was right." They fell asleep like that, holding each other, secure in their love and grateful for the life they shared. And in the morning, when the rooster crowed at sunrise, they woke together, ready to start another day, another chapter in their continuing story. The sun rose over the Nevada mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The rooster crowed, proud and loud, announcing the new day. The cattle began to stir and the horses nickered in the barn. The ranch was waking up, coming to life, ready for another day of work and love and living. Owen and Fiona rose together, dressed, and went out to start their day. They worked side by side as they had for 20 years, comfortable in their partnership, secure in their love. This was their life, the life they had built together, and it was good. It was very good indeed. And it all started with sunrise, just as Owen had promised that first day, when a frightened woman with nothing but a rooster had become the greatest gift he had ever received. Every sunrise since had been a gift too, another day together, another opportunity to love and be loved, another chapter in their beautiful story. The story of how she brought a rooster as her only dowry, and the rancher smiled and said, "Then we start with sunrise." And oh, what a beautiful beginning it had been, and what a beautiful life had unfolded from it, day by day, sunrise by sunrise, for all the years of their lives together.